Well, welcome to this hub session in the European Utility Week. My name is Guillermo Aman. I'm Vice President of T&D Europe. T&D Europe is the European Association of manufacturers of all kinds of technologies, equipments, and services for the transmission and distribution network. And this is the 5th year that we cooperate with Clarion, who is the organizer of this event. And it's the 5th time that we cooperate for the organization of a hub session. This year we have chosen this session on the energy revolution track that is going to be devoted to discuss about decentralization and how it's going to be a reality. Well, as a very short introduction to the session, well, I'm not going to discover anything saying that, the target is not decentralization for the sake of it. The target is, of course, the decarbonization of our economy, and electricity has shown that is the energy vector that is easier to decarbonize. In the last years, I think that all our sector has made a big effort to include more and more renewable resources into the system. And now this is turning into the fact that is a reality. I mean, the resources, the decentralized resources are increasing because of let's say, the evolution of the technologies on renewable resources. Well, that is increasing some, let's say, technical problems or technical difficulties that we are solving, and it's how to organize all that system that is decentralized. Well, the coordination of those resources is now a must between the TSOs and the DSOs, something that is different to what it was in the past, and this is this is changing the scenario of how is handled all the transmission and distribution system. In fact, microgrids is now showing us, let's say, a possible solution for how to manage the resources that we have in this context. Well, I'm not going to let's say, to make it longer. I think that the most important thing is to listen to the presentations from the speakers that we have invited to come to this session. The first speaker is Marco Krase, who is Managing Director of Stadtwerke Wunsiedel. Marco unfortunately cannot stay here for the final debate at the end of the session. So in case that there is any question at the end of his presentation, please feel free. Marco, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad today I get the opportunity to present the Wunsiedler Weg of Energie in English, the Wunsiedel Way of Energy, and the challenges of the future of energy from the municipal utilities and the energy sector's point of view. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Marco Krase, and I'm electrical engineer. Since 2021, I have been working for the municipal utilities of a Franconia town, Wunsiedel, the so-called SWW. By 21, the SWW have been transformed into a limited company, and since that time we have founded several companies representing the changes of the energy industry. By these and the corporate philosophies of the SWW, I would like to open my presentation. I would like to say to you, English, this time is a big challenge for me to present these slides in English. I'm not a native speaker, and English is not my favorite language. First, a question: who knows Wunsiedel? Nobody. Wunsiedel is this small red point on the landscape here on the screen. It's a very small city in Upper Franconia, Bavaria, roughly 9,000 inhabitants, close to Bayreuth, and the next big city is Nuremberg. You know Nuremberg? Okay. It's 100 kilometers to Wunsiedel. The future of energy. Why do we renew our energy supply actuality? This is truly a good question. It's not like getting up in the morning and I'm saying, oh, let's have renewable energies right now and the whole system needs to change. No. We do renew the energy supply because we want to protect our climate. The climate, it's protection. It's change, and the saving of carbon dioxide is a prime movers of the change in the energy landscape. Even though one can discuss about the climate change and the man-made part of it. We all know that carbon dioxide does have an impact. Our task is to keep the man-made impact as slight as possible. Hence, I like to quote an old Indian proverb. It says, we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And I was raised by my parents who taught me to give back a loan at least in the same condition as it was before. And the same thing we should do with our planet, as unfortunately immigrating is not possible. How these aims could be reached, I would like to describe with, in German, the 3 E's. Energy saving, increase efficiency, renewable energies. It's not difficult to recognize that surely we are eager to increase of efficiency. But energy saving in an energy supplier, does it fit? Well, in our case, it does. We took up the cause of saving energies. It can be a business model as far as explained to the public, the customer and the fellows for what reason it will be works. What will happen with this change? With the transformation of the basic settings of the energy supply. We are used to being head of the food chain, like the leopard in the steppe. It can do as it please, as it can be certain that it will survive. It would look anything like that if playing field changed. And this is what happens in the energy industry. The key success factors are changing. Through this cat into the sea, and you will see that it no longer will seem like head of the food chain. Maybe it cannot even swim. Suddenly others are the top dogs. Suddenly the success factors have changed plainly. For us, this means that there are a whole new rules of the game. Then it's time to reshuffle the pack and we need to decide if we want to help shape the new rules. And let's keep the metaphor of the games. We want to mutually deal cards, or do we refuse? And say, no, the world should stay as it is. Anything should change and let's keep the step. It's unlikely that there ever will be water. Well, there are abundant exemplars where companies humans did not notice, did not sense the change. Some of these exemplars are Brockhaus, Nokia, Kodak companies who ignored the change, who couldn't imagine the film would become digital, or the cameras or cell phones would get developed, or that Wikipedia would replace Brockhaus. One of the best exemplars can be found in the Museum of Communication in Berlin, the Stagecoach. Once Henry Ford asked people how they would like visualize the future of mobility. They have never known about cars but said, we desire faster horses. And this is the analogous to the future of energy. If 10 years ago you had asked someone, will there be thousands of small power plants? The answer probably would have been no. The fulfillment of our tasks is defined by the 3 Ds. The strategy of our Wunsiedler Weg is based on this concept. D1, moving anyway from carbon dioxide, active climate protection. D2, business process will be digital, but also grids are going to be smarter. For both of these tasks, we need to provide an infrastructure. In our opinion, the perfect solution is a fiberglass-based grid. D3, Germany is a federal structured country. It means it is bottom-up organized and not top-down. Hence, the largest possible synergies can be achieved when it comes to construction of infrastructure, but also in the area of sector coupling, heat, mobility, and power. It's the same within energy industry. People couldn't and still can't imagine that will be thousands and thousands of power plant operators. But in the reality, it turns out that these power plants have been installed already. And it's possible today we need to go to all lengths to find our market role in the as a municipal utility and to become part of this system. The following two pictures indicated that the changes become obvious. We come from a centralized fossil system, but it's not only that we transform the fossil system in a decarbonized one, but also that we get distributed. That it's no longer is the future only, but present already is shown up by the many, many thousands of solar, wind and biomass power systems which are distributed and not entity. But with this change, we have facing different problems. Uncoordinated control of load. We have got a network system which finally not able to allocate clearly the flow directions of the energy. Unpractically grid conditions, and on top, everything under a new market conditions. That is the reason why we are looking forward to a cooperation with Siemens, because there are solutions. We did not just sign the contract for a battery storage system, but we signed a technology partnership. We would like to get into a close cooperation with Siemens to support Wunsiedel and the commonly follow and developed the Wunsiedel way of energy. The necessary technology do exist. Our task is to use and optimize them in order to get an efficient and scalable solution and to tackle the still remaining obstacles. Central and top-down organized systems without a significant sector coupling. A decentralized and bottom-up organized system where sector coupling is an essential part and the future of the system. Decentralized systems are more stable and less vulnerable and assaulted. The bond strengthens every single part of and terrible, it makes a whole system stronger. Let's do it. So, what we look for when we started our journey. What is our driver, our motivation? We will still want to achieve. This is our roadmap and timeline, Wunsiedler Weg Energy or Wunsiedler Way of Energy. We are answering the necessary changes and upcoming topics with our plan. When we started in 2004, everybody learned about our idea to build a PV plant, founded by Citizen Capital, a game changer at this point of time. Our house bank didn't want to found this project. In order to fulfill our vision, we started the communication with the townsmen of Wunsiedel. In a nutshell, it was distributive approach. Despite this fact, we were convinced and we wanted to prove not only to ourselves but also to the public that this approach will work. That's why we have these topics. For biomass, we have developed our satellite concept precisely to keep cascading as a little centralized, as necessary, as much as distributed as it possible. Here you can see one more time our response to the challenge. The extension of generation capacities in renewable energies. From 21 to 2017, it has mainly been complete. At the Wun pellet, we show a new power station capacities. We show that natural gas in common, it's a perfect energy source and storage medium. as every power grid can manage only one thing. It can only transport. Natural gas, the grid and the infrastructure can store and transport. We already find these locally. So we don't need to build up new ones, but smartly use the ones we have. A few impressions about the implementation of the 3Ds. We build before we draw high-resolution slides. Extension of a pellet production with a contented regulation power plant. Here we want to show and demonstrate how industry process can be used to support the grid, and hence how the energy system 4.0 works. To be successful, we need renewable and powerful system partners. We have found this partner in Siemens. They are not just a supplier for us, they help us for the entire process. From planning phase to finance solutions to the point of realization and the operation. As a small summary, I want to add something that is really important for me. Moving safely on the way, aware of insecurities, aware of the change, as remaining stationary would be the worst choice. We have to take decisions even with the awareness that there might be a wrong and a one and move on. Otherwise, it's a step backwards. Continuance is a possible change, just like a caterpillar transform into a butterfly. Let me end with a nice statement. I think that we don't have an energy problem in our world. In the nation of engineers and philosophers, it has to be possible to supply people with sufficient energy via sun, wind, biomass, and a proper way, in the desired place and at the right point in time. I'm looking forward to many new projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. One question from the audience? Well, so thank you very much, Marco. It's a pity that you cannot stay with us for the final debate. It's a pity, but okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. Well, after having seen a success story from the DSO perspective, managing decentralized resources, now let's listen what is the challenge for the TSO. To talk about that, we have Luca Marchisio. Luca is the head of business development at Terna in Italy. Please, Luca, the floor is yours.
Okay. Is there a pointer here? That you think this one? Yes. Okay. Okay. Ci vedo. Thank you. Hello. Hi, everybody. So my name is Luca Marchisio. I work for Terna. Terna is the Italian transmission system operator. As you all know, we own and manage the high voltage grid, and this is the first part of the job. And the second part of the job, which is going to be the more and more important in the future, is managing the second-by-second balancing between injection and withdrawal into the grid. Okay. The starting point, as has already been said, but I want to share this chart with you, is that the global temperature is rising, and is actually rising much more and more fast, and also in terms of absolute value, than what each one is saying in the world. This is a report which has been published 10 years ago by the IPCC, which is a bunch of 3,000 scientists selected from the whole world. They are meteorological scientists and from United Nations, and they have actually said that the gray, no, doesn't work, yes, but it doesn't, here. This is the actual average temperature of the world measured. And the measurement today is 1 degree above pre-industrial levels. It was 0.7 10 years ago. So this is the actual figure. The actual figure is that if we stop, according to their calculations, if we stop emitting CO2 tomorrow, the global temperature will stop at 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial level. So the famous Paris target has already been reached. 1.5 is already reached. We are going towards 2, towards 3, towards 4 in 30 years from now. In 2036, we will have ended all the carbon budget of the whole century in order to keep the temperature, the world temperature, below 2 degrees. So let's talk about this. We are going towards 3 degrees. We've had 30 deaths in Italy last week due to an incredible wind storm which has never been seen in Italy, something like that. And it's been caused by a slight temperature difference of 2 or 3 degrees between Africa and Southern Europe. Second fact, in the last 25 years, the world energy consumption has nearly doubled, which means that all the effort, the incredible effort which has been done to build new renewable sources has barely, scarcely covered this increase in world energy consumption. The renewables mix has moved from 13 to 14%, in spite of the fact that a huge amount of renewables have been built in the world. In Europe, we have given ourselves very challenging targets to decarbonize global economy, and it's correct to do that because Europe is the first one which has started polluting this world. Now, China and Africa are doing what we have done starting 100 years ago. The second fundamental fact is that each analyst says, and this is a study from the World Energy Outlook from IEA, but if you look at McKinsey studies, the results are almost the same. Each analyst says that decarbonizing our economy is based on renewables and moving this energy through the electric vector. Electricity is not an energy source, but it's a vector which allows to move electricity from where it's produced, which is where wind and sun is, to where it's consumed, which is usually not there, not in the same place. But this study says that $1 spent invested in new renewable energy sources calls more than $1 to be spent in grids. The green part is the renewables, the investment in renewable sources. The blue part is how much is planned to be invested in the next 10 years or so in grids. This has already been said. But this explosion, or this hoped explosion of decentralized renewables already today is posing big challenges to the operation, to the safe operation of the electric system. These figures are from Italy. In the last 10 years or so, we have seen a huge increase in renewable sources, 25 gigawatt of additional capacity, mainly from solar and wind. This means that in a given year, and in a given month of this year, we've had a 39% generation from renewables, average in a month. But in a single day, this means 63%, can mean 63% in a single, these are actual figures from 2017 Italy. And in a given hour, this means 89%, obviously, because at the peak of the day, when you have a low consumption, a lot of sun, renewables become 90%. If we want to move that 39 up to 70, 80, this means that in a given hour, you will have 200%. You will have a generation which is double the needed one. And this is the fact that we have to manage. At the same time, thermoelectric generation, thermoelectric capacity is going down, and this is good, okay, because we are replacing thermoelectric generation with renewables. But in specific days of the year, the system doesn't work anymore, because if you do not have wind or you do not have sun, what do? Are we all ready to accept a blackout or to be without electricity for 1 day, a week? No. I can assure that we are not. For even 1 minute, we are not ready or willing to accept it. Reserve margins at peak hours, bottom right of the chart, are going down in Italy, and we are having more and more issues to manage the grid. In these days, Elia, the Belgian TSO, has said that with the shutdown of nuclear power plants, they cannot assure a safe operation of the grid without heavily relying on import from border countries. Still figures from Italy, but in many countries the situation is similar. Okay, I understand from sitting far you cannot read all the figures here, but we'll help you quickly. The red box says that as of today in Italy we already have almost 30 gigawatt of generation capacity installed on medium and low voltage grids. 30 gigawatt. The peak load in Italy is 55 or something like that, and the total capacity installed is 100. So 1/4 of the total installed capacity in Italy already today is connected to the low and medium voltage grid. In terms of numbers, it's a huge quantity, almost 1 million generation points, mainly solar rooftop, but obviously in terms of, as it always happens in the electricity system, there are few units with a huge power and a lot of units with low power. So which are the main issues that we have to face? And these are technical issues. I'm a mechanical engineer, by the way, so I scarcely can scratch the surface of these issues, because only an electrical engineer can understand these facts. But I will try as best as possible to go through them very quickly. So we have a significant need of ramping up. What does it mean? You can see there on the right three curves. The blue one is the load of a day, the daily load. The dotted curve with a reverse U shape is all the generation that you collect from renewable sources, and the curve which goes down below zero is the net load that we, transmission operators, see on our grid, and that we have to cover with the other resources. We have a knob. Our colleagues working in the control center, there are 500 of them whose only job is rotating knobs on a second-by-second basis. Okay, it's not like that, but I try to make it easy. Second-by-second basis to keep frequency stable at 50 Hz and to make injection and withdrawal the same second by second. 2 years ago, there's been a blackout in Australia. In 1.5 seconds, the system has gone down. When we had the blackout in 2003 in Italy, it took 20 minutes to go to the blackout. There, with renewables, it took 1.5 seconds to have the half of the country, 1/4 of the country in blackout. Because you do not have any more inertia. With renewables, there is an electronic inverter, frequency goes down, shut down. There are no masses rotating which can absorb the shock and give you the time to do something else. So when the sun goes up, the residual load, this is a 2030 simulation, the residual load goes down. You have to shut down anything you have, because the sun is going up, and you have to immediately shut down all the programmable power plants. In the evening, you have the opposite event. The sun goes down, everybody goes back home, the residual load explodes, 20 gigawatt per hour, it's incredible ramp rate, and you need to switch on whatever you have to cover this residual load when the sun is going down. This is the first issue. Second, you do not have regulating capacity. You cannot rotate a knob and change the inputs that you have from renewables. You can just decrease them. And throw away the energy they produce. But you cannot increase the energy which is coming from sun or wind, because you usually use it as much as you have it. You do not have upward margins, reserve margins. When something shuts down on one side, we instantly increase production from another side of the system. But if you do not have upward reserve, you don't know what to do. You have grid congestions, because obviously when there is a lot of wind in the southern part of Italy, you need to move electricity from the southern part to the northern part of Italy, and you have to build lines designed for that day of that year when you have this huge amount of wind and that load on the other part of the country, and so on. To solve these issues and to make this system work, we have built a kind of toolbox. And this toolbox is, as it frequently happens when problems are complex, is not made of only one solution. You need to put together a set of tools. Obviously, the first one is to build an infrastructure which is redundant and meshed. And this is not easy. It's always more difficult because the social acceptance of infrastructures is always at stake. And it's not easy to have keep in consideration that in Italy, when you put a new line on our development plan, it takes 13 years on average to have it built. 13 years. So we today are planning the 2030 electric system. Second, storage. What do you do during the peak hours of the day? You need to store this energy, otherwise it's all over-generation and it must be thrown away. So we need to invest in bulk storage, bulk and distributed storage utilities for storing electricity, which is not an easy task. Smart grids and digitalization, we need a new way to coordinate the operation of TSOs and DSOs, and we are going a bit in detail on this. We need a new market design. We need to rethink completely our market structure of today. All energy markets are based on a system marginal price concept. So the price of the electricity is the price of the marginal resource needed to satisfy the load in that given hour. But which is, since the marginal price by definition coincides with the marginal generation cost, which means the cost for producing that single kilowatt hour there, what happens when all the generation comes from renewables? The marginal cost of generation is zero, because the variable cost of generation of renewables is zero. So the price of the electricity goes to zero. Good to hear, we can say, as citizens. But the fact is that no one is ever going to keep running the old, ugly thermal power plants, which are actually needed in given hours of the day, today and tomorrow. And even in 2050, we are going to need something to switch on quickly to compensate for the fact that we have 15 continuous days of rain with no wind. You need to do something to compensate for these 15 continuous days of no wind and rain. Okay. So our task has been in the past and will be in the future to guarantee this security of the system, which means whatever happens, we need to keep frequency constant and voltage level constant. The adequacy of the system means that whatever happens, there must be a capacity, generation capacity with the same size as the demand. Otherwise, we have to shut down some consumers. Grid resilience is a new issue. It's always been there, but now it's more and more relevant. As I already said, we have had a huge wind in Italy, wind and rain, and we have lost 60 high voltage lines due to trees falling on the lines. And we have left 500,000 people without electricity for 1 week. not all of them for 1 week, but some of them for 1 day, some of them for 1 week. And we have had 30 casualties among the population due to this huge wind. Quality of supply and the efficiency means making markets efficient and giving the final consumer the lowest cost for the electricity. Sustainability is obvious, I won't talk about that. In order to do that, we need to allow these new resources to participate in the ancillary services market, and this is the fundamental step here. But these new resources are not the same thing as the coal power plant or the gas power plant, which is designed to push a pedal and change the power output. It's easy for them changing the power output. It's their job. It's easy. For demand response, and for renewables, it's not that easy. So if our markets, our ancillary services markets are designed for thermal power plants, we need to design them for these other resources. For instance, you need to pay for the availability of the flexibility and not only for the actual providing of the balancing activity, because you need to have fixed revenues in order to be able to invest in a technological and, okay, it's too complex, in a technological evolution of your systems. In Italy, but as it happens in many European countries, we have launched some pilot projects, but these are not pilot projects. This is an actual market opening to new resources. We have started 1.5 years ago with the virtual aggregation of consumption unit, call it demand response, and it's been followed a few months later with the virtual aggregation of generation, of small generation units. And we have seen a good progress. Yep, we have seen a good progress. We have 500 plus 600 megawatts of qualified resources in our ancillary services market, and 300 of them, the red part, have won a tender to receive a fixed monthly payment to provide their availability to reduce the consumption instead of independently from the actual order, dispatching order received or not. But there is still a long way to go. So, coming to the last points, the first one is, what about TSO-DSO coordination? In our view, what we must work on today is finding the smartest way to enable these distributed resources connected to the medium and low voltage grid to participate in the auxiliary services markets that already exist today and which are indispensable for guaranteeing the safe and reliable operation of the grid. So this is the issue today. Tomorrow, there will be the issue of using these same flexibility resources to manage local congestions at DSO level. But this is not, probably it's an issue already today. I don't want to say that it's not. But if we do not move this first step, this system will not work. We will keep coal power plants running because we need flexibility. If there is no flexibility, even if you have a huge amount of renewables installed, we will still keep coal power plants running because otherwise there will be a blackout, which is unacceptable for the society. So this is the first step. The first step is finding a smart way, a quick way to allow the distributor to say if that resource can or cannot operate in the auxiliary services market and up to what extent. But these markets already exist today and we need these resources today, not tomorrow. First thing. Second thing, distributed resources connected to low voltage grid are not visible. Nobody knows what's happening there. Nobody knows the generation which is coming from them. And as I told you, there are 30 gigawatts of renewable generation in Italy that we know nothing about in real time. So what we do is oversize reserve, oversize whatever, because we do not measure them. We need to measure them in a real time, because if tomorrow there will be 70 gigawatts of them, which is the total load of Italy, we cannot manage the system without knowing what's happening. It's impossible. If you have a cloud there, If a cloud comes, suddenly that primary substation, which is, and I see the net of generation and consumption, if a cloud goes there, its withdrawal becomes immediately the total consumption, but I don't know which it was, because I don't know how much was self-consumed. I need to know that how much is self-consumed. It's easy, but we need to know that. Third thing, talking about local energy communities. Local energy, I believe we must distinguish between going off-grid and building as many electric generation, as much electric generation at distributed level as possible. This is very different. This is very different. If you want to operate your local grid disconnected from the grid, you are free to do that. But you must be disconnected from the grid for the whole 8,760 hours of the year. If you use the grid for 1 hour, you use the grid forever, because it's a fixed investment. So, yeah, finish. This is. So, there is a big difference. Local communities, fantastic, whatever you want, but we must promote installation of renewables distributed. That's fantastic, and we must use explicit incentives to promote this. We must not use implicit incentive to incentivize degridification, because this is nonsense from a technical and economical point of view. I believe I can skip the conclusions because of the lack of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just let me challenge you a little, just to introduce the debate that we'll have at the end. You have mentioned that in 2050 we'll still need to have the traditional power stations. That means that you don't believe that the technologies for storage are going to have the evolution to permit that the traditional stations will disappear?
Yes, absolutely. I believe that there will be a huge increase in storage, but still 100% is, economically speaking, is stupid, I believe, personally. 90% is good, 95 or 85, I don't know which is the exact figure, but as it always happens, you have exponential phenomena. So if you want to go to 100%, you need to exponentially increase the investments, which doesn't make sense. Let's keep them there available and use them as less as possible, but let's keep them there available and use when it's really needed.
Thank you. We'll have the chance to discuss it during the debate. Well, we have listened to the DSOs and the TSOs, and now we are going to listen what happens with the technologies. François Borges, he's a marketing director for the division of microgrids at Schneider Electric, and today he's representing the whole industry. He's talking on behalf of the all European manufacturers, on behalf of TND Europe. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I have to download my presentation, which is here.
Yeah.
Perfect. It seems to work. Okay. So thank you, Luca, for this complete presentation of the grid itself. So after the presentation of the grid, I wanted to switch to decentralized energy usage by starting with, how does it work? Yeah, okay, thank you. By starting by introducing the microgrid concept and illustrating the microgrid concept with 3 different cases, which are really, which has nothing to do with each other, and highlighting the technology behind to make it happen. Of course, for the end user needs, but also in conjunction with the grid balancing capacity. So first of all, if I want to introduce the microgrid concept, I wanted to split in 3 different categories, which are very different expectations. First one is the pure grid-tied microgrids, for which the aim for the end user is to optimize its energy bill and minimize its carbon footprint, so optimize the sustainability of the electricity consumption, the energy consumption, let's say. Second is the islandable microgrid. Most of the time it behaves like the first one, but it has to manage the blackout. So in countries where there is a risk of blackout, we need to be able to operate with the local distributed energy resources for a limited period of time usually, and to manage the transition between grid tied and off-grid and vice versa. So this is, let's say, a sustainability issue in addition with the previous value. And the pure off-grid, I think it's something clearly different, never connected to the grid. Maybe in the future, when the grid will be available, there will be a possibility to connect it, but the aim is to operate fully disconnected, and the technology for that are a little bit different, and we will illustrate this case later on. In terms of value, I like to illustrate the three pillars for microgrid expectation for the end user. Of course, it depends on the previous three categories. Some are more important, some are less important, but the major value expected by the end user can be summarized in those three categories, in this triangle. Reliable energy. Of course, we need to preserve critical loads 24/7, 365, and so on and so on. Have a green energy, so incorporate as much as possible the renewable resources for supplying the microgrid. And of course, last but not least, the efficiency of optimization. When I speak about efficiency, usually dollar or euro are coming in front of the picture, and most of the people want to decrease the energy bill, even if they claim they want to be green and so on. But efficiency is usually one of the most important value for the microgrid operators. In terms of use cases for managing all those microgrids, and this is the introduction for technology just after, there are several needs we need to fulfill. So first of all, flexibility is clearly the critical notion in terms of microgrid. So for optimizing the way the energy is consumed, we need to leverage flexibility. Of course, flexibility can be provided by battery, by storage means, but also by existing loads, which can be delayed, anticipated. I think about electrical vehicle or HVAC. So any mean of flexibility is really useful for optimizing the way the energy is used in a microgrid. The other use cases are the one required for balancing the microgrid when the grid is not there anymore. So first of all, monitoring the grid to identify if it's present or not. If it's not present, we need to make at the microgrid scale what is done at the grid level, which has been described by Luca, balancing the microgrid by making the balance between production and loads needs in real time. So 100% of the time we need to balance the microgrid if we don't want to have a blackout like for the main grids. Less impact for microgrid, but even it's not very satisfactory if we have a blackout at the microgrid level. Okay, so let's try to illustrate what I presented on three different topics. So I tried to split the market in four categories. Of course, it's a simplification. Everybody can claim it's not right, 100% right, but it's quite interesting, and I share it with numerous of people, and now it's started to be accepted. Two axes, grid tied and off-grid, and single site or multiple site. So on the right, let's address commercial buildings, for example, which are grid tied and one single owner, one single bill, one single a utility meter, and there are some specificities. And then I will switch to islanded microgrid on the bottom left, and I will describe a community on the bottom right, and each of it have its own specificities. I won't address the bottom left, which are the mine in the middle of Australia, for example, which have no access to the main grid. It's a particular case, and I will just illustrate the three other cases. So first of all, self-consumption on okay. No, ça marche pas. Okay. Self-consumption on a commercial building, which is an important case, and I think it has been introduced by Luca in the capacity market illustration. Those 400 megawatts available could be identified in such cases, and I will try to illustrate. So first of all, what is the aim of such a building? If it has distributed generation, is to try to consume 100% of this local production. Of course, if the local production is very low, below the minimum site consumption, nothing to do, no technology is necessary. We plug the solar panel and everything is 100% consumed. The issue arises when sometimes you overpass the needs of your site, and for that you need to delay or to anticipate some energy consumption. And this needs to have a clear view of your building flexibility to enable the adequation of energy production and energy consumption. So this is something which is enabled by technology, and the technology necessary for that needs to make forecast of what will happen in terms of energy production, of course, and what will be the potential energy consumption in order to enable the consumption during energy availability, in this case, in the middle of the day, to favor in the middle of the day, to avoid requesting complementary energy sources. Okay. So, optimized DR dimensioning is the first step for enabling an optimized site. So we need to dimension the PV, we need to dimension the battery and the complementary sources according to the energy needs. This is necessary we need for that a smart tool for not over-dimensioning or under-dimensioning all the other resources. We need to operate in a smart way the DER for balancing the production and the consumption, for self-consumption, of course, but we need also to correct the gap in real time. That means even if we have predicted and we have forecasted the energy consumption and the energy production in a smart way, there are always gaps in real time, so we need to correct it locally at minute ahead or even second ahead for optimizing the way we consume energy. We need to provide reports to optimize the energy at the end of a cycle, so we can provide advice to the end user to modify even if it has not been dimensioned properly. And we also can apply complementary use cases. Those use cases are the ones which are illustrated by microgrid connected to the grid. So in this case, we can we can anticipate or delay energy consumption due to tariff periods. In this case, we can anticipate the heating of a site, or we can delay the heating because the energy is cheaper before or after the defined period. Here, I have illustrated the different tariff periods, mid-peak, off-peak, high-peak. Of course, there is a battery, so it's easy to switch from low tariff period to high tariff period, or vice versa, to switch energy consumption from high tariff period to low tariff period. But we can also illustrate an interesting use cases, which is a demand charge. It doesn't work, okay. So in red, in a dotted line, you can see that we have launched the battery for avoiding overpassing the demand charge. In this case, overpassing the demand charge will generate penalties. And of course, the connected microgrid aims is to decrease the energy bill or not to increase it. And in this case, by avoiding overpassing the demand charge using the battery, this will lead to decreasing the energy bill or not increasing the energy bill. Another easy example is to switch the battery, to charge the battery during off-peak period and to discharge the battery during peak time. Okay, so all that is done by dedicated technology which enable to forecast and to control the loads by taking into account all the energy constraints like tariff, like all the energy contracts. And this needs to be done by a dedicated tool. Another example is a reliable microgrid. So this is an example in Singapore. It's an island which has been installed with renewable, with a lot of different technologies. There is solar PV, there is wind, there is bioenergy, biogas, hydrogen, and storage, traditional storage with lithium ion. And there are some productive activity like desalinization, hatchery, and so on. So and electrical and hydrogen vehicles. So a lot of different loads which are installed on this island. And the aim of this for this island is of course not to supply all the loads with diesel generation, is to maximize the renewable source of energy. Usually we say that 30% is an average limit if we have traditional technology. In this case, the aim was to overpass these 30% renewable barriers to be able to supply most of the loads with renewable for certain part of the journey, of the time, sorry. And this is enabled, of course, by innovative technology, which are fully different from the one I presented before. So here is just the drawings. I don't want to go in details for the architecture of the island, but you can see the distributed energy resources I mentioned, so battery, power generation, hydrogen for electrical vehicle for storage, standard storage, central electrothermal storage, and all the loads on the right. What is important for overpassing this 30% renewable is to have what we call a virtual synchronous generator to enable to maximize the usage of renewable energy. As soon as most of the loads are supplied with the renewable, we can turn off the diesel generator, which is, of course, not the future-proof technology for supplying a microgrid, even a pure disconnected microgrid. That's very clear. So to summarize, the power management system is controlling and piloting, of course, the genset, because there are some diesel generator, but mostly the inverters, to maintain the power and the frequency, like in a normal grid, and to limit the fuel consumption. There are solutions for virtual generator to enable this to overpass those 30% of renewable energy. The power management system is piloting the whole microgrid DR and in real time renewable energy production and maximize and minimize fuel consumption. So this is the pure islanded microgrid presentation. Let's finalize with sharing energy at a district level, which is another type of microgrid, bottom left, so connected to the grid and multiple users. So this is an example in France where you have 7 buildings. Every building have its own specificities. Some have PV, some have electrical vehicle, some have flexible load, some other don't have. So it's a campus for training students, 2,500 apprentices. And so the last minute. And for that, we need a specific technology called DEMIS, District Energy Management System, to share energy between different buildings. So this is an interesting case of application for which we can identify the extra amount of energy on one building and to share it with another who needs to charge an electrical vehicle at the same time. And it's an interesting case for sharing energy between different users and different producers to balance microgrid, a district microgrid. Oh. Okay, so I don't want to go into details. If some of you want to have more details, you can visit us in the fair. So just to finalize in terms of technology, what is very important for this case is to have 3 different portals. One is the operational portal for managing the HVAC, the electrical distribution and so on. One for optimizing the microgrid energy usage in the middle, and one which enables the students to make the links between their own activity, butcher, and some others, car repair and so on, with energy. That's a very important notion to manage this activity together with electricity demand. For concluding my purpose, as we see, there are different types of microgrid to meet different values and customer needs. Of course, not all of them are mature at the same time in every geographies. And of course, behind that, there are different solutions, different technical solutions for optimizing the microgrid operation. The common trend is clearly to switch from diesel generation, CO2 emitting sources to renewable energy. And for different manners, I have tried to illustrate that. So to switch for greener source of energy. And for that, flexibility is a mandatory notion for enabling the optimization of the microgrid management for decreasing the CO2 emission at the microgrid level. Thank you very much, and sorry for the delay.
No problem. Thank you, Francois. Well, in a session like this, talking about new technologies and talking about the new paradigm of decentralized energy, I think it's mandatory to have the academia. And okay, we invited Imperial College to be with us. We made them some proposals on the issues that they could tackle, talking about technologies and whatever. And they made us a proposal that was really very interesting. Okay, why not to talk about the benefits for the system and for the consumers? Well, it was supposed Goran Stavak to be here, but day before yesterday just called us that he's ill. But on his behalf, on behalf of the Imperial College, has sent a research associate that I think is going to provide us a very interesting presentation. It's Marco Neri. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hello, my name is Marco Neri. I come from Imperial College London, and I'm not sure how exactly I should start my presentation.
That's right.
Yeah. So can I use this? I just flicked it. Okay. Great. So I come from Imperial College London. I work for a research group that's headed by Professor Goran Sterbak. And a lot of the things we do, both in the UK and Europe, is to investigate how various technologies, solutions, flexible approaches could help the power system and energy system in more general to decarbonize at a lower cost. So a lot of our work revolves around that, and we try to develop models that allow us to provide quantitative evidence to industry, to the government, to the regulators, to say how much you could actually save in your system if you apply this or that approach. What I'm going to talk about today is some of the insights we got into how flexibility, and in particular decentralized flexibility, could help the system to operate more efficiently, to be designed more efficiently, and all within the decarbonization agenda. So this is probably a repetition of what we've already heard today from previous speakers, but basically decarbonization is in the background of everything we're trying to do here, and the key challenges for decarbonization are sort of illustrated in these charts, where you have on the left-hand side the variation of demand as red and the variation of wind as a blue line, and you can clearly see that the variation of wind is something which follows a completely different pattern and is much less predictable and less regular than your normal demand variations. On the other hand, another important pillar of decarbonization, so in addition to building renewables, is also electrifying heat and transport demand. And we've done some analysis to tell us if we electrify our vehicles, our road transport, and if we let them charge as they wish, so according to their convenience, the resulting demand would significantly increase the peaks that we already see on the right. So the resulting system demand would become very peaky, and that will of course be very costly because you will need peaking generation capacity as well as network capacity to be able to supply those peaks efficiently. So a number of challenges arise from this decarbonization agenda, some of them coming from the ability to supply, balance supply and demand flexibly, some of them to do with the backup capacity of wind, because as Luca mentioned, what if the wind doesn't blow for a few days, where does your electricity come from? There are also issues to do with frequency control and inertia, which are particularly relevant, which are relevant for all systems, but as UK has an island system with lower overall inertia, and all the interconnections with the neighboring systems are DC. That's why inertia becomes quite a prominent issue. I guess if there are any Irish colleagues, I think these issues are even more pronounced there because Ireland is an even smaller system. So these are the challenges. However, there are also opportunities. Traditionally, the way the system works is it shifts bulk of energy from big power plants, big generators, through the transmission grid, towards the distribution grid, and onto the consumers, which have traditionally been mostly passive. So it was sort of a predict and provide kind of approach. However, with the arrival of, sorry, is this? Okay, sorry. So with the arrival of smart technologies, which allow us to control things more flexibly, with the arrival of distributed storage technologies, demand-side response, things like smart EV charging, smart appliances, there's a huge potential for these, what were previously the passive consumers, to provide flexibility to the grid. And they can provide the flexibility both at the distribution and the transmission level, as well as support national system operation. So there's kind of a reverse flow almost of where the flexibility could come from. And this is all part of this decentralized energy paradigm. So, yeah, as I said, lots of different technologies, distributed generators, storage, demand-side response, all in a way make consumers become prosumers, because they can all both consume and produce energy and provide services to the grid. I mentioned that we developed a lot of models, and some of the key models we have try to investigate what the benefits of these technologies are in what we call a whole system context. So the key thing to note here is that technologies, let's take distributed storage, distributed batteries as an example. So if you build the battery, you would affect the way the system operates on an hourly basis, so you would have short-term effects. But you also have long-term effects, because that battery can help you avoid building more distribution capacity, more transmission capacity, or more generation, peaking capacity. So you have to look at timescales from planning years ahead to the short-term system operation. So that's a temporal component. The other one is the spatial component. So if you have a distributed storage, that can help both your local grid to, let's say, avoid having to reinforce or defer reinforcement, at the same time as helping the national system, let's say, to balance renewables more efficiently. So we have to take into account the spatial dimension as well. And that's why we developed a framework which allows us to quantify whole system impacts or benefits of different technologies, looking at time scales and geographical scales at the same time. So we start from trying to, let's say, ignore any market inefficiencies. Let's assume we can utilize any flexibility we have in a perfectly efficient manner. What are the actual economic benefits we could get from flexibility? So we've assumed, let's say, certain not too optimistic assumptions on what will happen with distributed storage, with demand-side response in the UK, and we try to see what if we want to bring our system to a certain carbon target. So you can see on the chart, you have 100 grams per kilowatt hour and 50 grams per kilowatt hour. So these are, let's say, the carbon intensities of electricity production. So the question we ask is, if we do this decarbonization with or without flexibility, how does our system cost change? And this clearly shows that if you have flexibility available, that your system could cost a lot less. So with deeper decarbonization targets of, let's say, 50 grams per kilowatt hour, we found that the UK system in the 2030-40 horizon could cost up to £8 billion per year less. So this is annual number of how much it costs to build and operate a power system. Now the numbers I'll quote would be mostly in pounds, but considering where all the thing with Brexit is going, you can safely replace them with euros. Because long gone are the days where pound was €1.5. They are now pretty much almost reached parity. So yeah, we're talking about a large number of billions of pounds that you could save by deploying flexibility efficiently. And furthermore, we also break down the benefit. So the 8 billion can be broken down into how much we save in operating cost, how much we save in avoided distribution investment cost, how much we save because we need to build less interconnection capacity with the neighboring systems. And probably the key component here, which is the solid red one, is with flexibility, you can hit the same carbon target with lower investment in low carbon capacity. So low carbon generation, now we've seen that wind and PV have reduced in cost massively, but still you can hit the same target by either building less low carbon generation, renewables or nuclear or CCS or whatever you fancy. So you can save money by being more flexible, utilizing the low carbon resources more efficiently and having to build less of them. That's one of the key sources of value that we see for the flexibility going forward, especially in the context of deeper decarbonization, so 2030 and beyond. And another way, this is kind of just another angle of the same story, is if my system was flexible, which means if I had a lot of demand-side flexibility and storage in it, what's the best portfolio of low-carbon technologies I should build to hit a certain carbon target? And this clearly shows that if I'm not flexible, so let's say I'm ignoring flexibility, I'm keeping everything more or less as it is today, then the answer is build nuclear or build nuclear with CCS, depending on how ambitious you are in your decarbonization goals. So despite nuclear and CCS being more expensive than renewables, because we don't have flexibility, we are not able to integrate renewables efficiently, we should actually go for the more expensive option. However, if we flip the coin around and we do go for flexibility, and the high flex case is the kind of, everything is perfectly flexible, we are utilizing all potential demand side response, we are building masses of storage, then the answer to the question, what's the best portfolio to build, is completely different. The best portfolio then is, yes, I'll take advantage of my cheap wind and PV resources, I'll build a bit of nuclear and some conventional technologies, to keep things like frequency and inertia going, but it's a completely different answer. And of course, the portfolio with high flex will be a lot cheaper than the portfolio with low flex. So there's a massive whole system component of benefits to think about when it comes to flexibility and decarbonization. Okay, so Now I'm going to move towards this decentralized energy paradigm a bit. So we see a number of opportunities how customers could provide flexibility both locally and nationally. So we have done some analysis, for instance, which say that a flexible consumer in the future, so the future being 2030 and onwards, could pay more than 50% less for their energy bill than an inflexible consumer. So consuming the same amount of energy, but being flexible in terms of when and how this energy is consumed. Of course, this will require quite a lot of changes in terms of how the wholesale and retail markets work. So, the end goal being having a cost-effective market which provide location-specific signals and then also time varying. So that's the kind of the holy grail, which is not easy. And as was also mentioned, the energy market is not the whole story. We also have ancillary services. So if you want to have an efficient system, you need to adequately price both energy and these services. There are two examples here to mention. So on the left, we've done analysis on how much more emissions would adding electric vehicles demand onto the power system trigger, because we now have to generate additional electricity. And that's greatly a function of how smart you are with the charging. So if you're not smart, if you go for the business as usual, which is the one on the left, then yes, you have additional cost, you have additional emissions associated with EV demand. The emissions are still lower than conventional vehicles, so this is expressed in grams per kilometer. So this is around 26, 27 grams, which is great comparing it to typical ICEs. However, if you are smart with the vehicle, and especially if you're so smart that you provide what's called vehicle-to-grid services, so things like discharging or providing frequency reserve services, then you can actually make your carbon footprint negative. So I've added my EV demand onto the system, but the net effect on emissions is negative, because this is a flexible resource, and the system, which wants to be low carbon, really likes flexible resources. That means, thank you, that you should, in a way, almost that this driver who's very flexible should almost be paid to charge his car. And on the right is another example, which is from a hybrid heat pump project, which also shows that if you're very flexible, then you could save hundreds of pounds per year by adopting smart control mechanisms for your heating. Okay, there was also a mention in one of the previous presentations on the TSO-DSO coordination. So what we argue for is the whole system concept. So if you just go for the DNO-centric or the TNO-centric, so either distribution level or transmission level optimization, then you are missing a part of the value that you could get from looking at the whole system as a total. So there are synergies and conflicts between using flexibility at the transmission distribution level, and we need to make sure that we get the overall best outcome. Some of the challenges we have also is how do we now deploy these decentralized market approaches, and we've done some research to show that if you simply apply kind of naive dynamic pricing, which means I'll send low price signals during the night, I'll send high price signals during the day. So if you did that and your demand was very flexible, you could see something like that red spike over there, which is basically all of your demand shifting towards the nighttime, concentrating in that hour, and you have a new peak. So you're not much better off than where you started from. So we've developed some approaches, such as restricting how much flexibility you can provide, or providing randomized price signals that avoid this issue. So you can see that, for instance, the green line still redistributes electricity, so you still have peak reduction, but then you don't have those secondary peaks appearing during the nighttime. Another interesting component as well is what we call the customer choice-driven network development. So this is again enabled by decentralized technologies, and because I'm short on time, I'll just mention very quickly that this is all about customers differentiating between essential and non-essential loads. So if you're willing to have some of your loads switched off if you don't really need them when the network is in trouble, then that can save a lot of money in terms of developing the network, and it can also save you a lot of money from the distribution charges, which is shown on this chart on the right. So you can see that a highly flexible consumer pays about 3.5 times less in distribution charges than a low flexible consumer. So I have to flip through this quickly, but these are all really interesting concepts. This is probably one of the last slides. This is about how flexibility could help to mitigate market power. So if you have a small number of large suppliers, they can strategically bid in the market to increase their profits, especially during peak hours when there's scarce supply. So we show here that if you have various levels of flexibility in your demand, and that's parameterized using this parameter alpha. So alpha, just imagine alpha is some sort of level of demand flexibility. As you increase alpha from 0 to 10%, you can see that first of all you reduce the peak demand on the left-hand side, but secondly on the right-hand side is the kind of extra profit above the market efficient level. You can see that having flexible demand greatly diminishes the level to which suppliers can exercise their market power. Thank you. And another illustration from another project saying, what if we had a storage asset that could sell a variety of services? This doesn't exist today, so we don't yet have markets for things like network support, and a lot of the markets still have a lot of barriers in terms of entry. But if we had a perfectly efficient market in the future, and you built a storage asset, then if you just use it for arbitrage, we see that the value of these revenues is roughly £500 per kilowatt. But if you are able to access all revenue streams simultaneously, all the different markets, frequency regulation, balancing, network support, capacity markets, then you could increase your revenues 10 times while still not overselling yourself. So you're still not over-delivering, you're still not promising yourselves in more than 2 places. But you're just trying to maximize what you can earn from these different markets, finding the best trade-offs. And this is just the recap of everything. So we see that there's a great potential to use flexible technologies. First of all, they can help your system decarbonize more efficiently. They can create a lot of flexible prosumers. And we can see that there's great benefits in terms of cost savings, in terms of reduced market power, and in terms of enabling more customer choice being built into how systems are operated and built. However, there are a number of things that need to change before we can fully take advantage of this. First of all, we need to make sure that all the markets are aligned with each other, so that any market reflects not just the local cost, but also wider system cost. So there'll have to be some integration between wholesale and retail. And also we need to come up with ways to provide efficient local, regional, and international signals so that we can achieve efficient system objectives. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Marco. Well, as an expert from the academia that we have proposed Marco to moderate the debate at the end, and he will do so.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
So. Thank you.
Well, the next presentation is going to show us a new approach for network management. And for that purpose, we have 2 experts from Croatian DSO, is HAP. We have Goran Pisko, who is the Deputy Director of Power System Control, and Tomislav Sinieri, that is the Head of Power System in Electra Koprivnica. So, the floor is yours.
Can you just the presentation start? Hello, I would like to say hi in behalf of me, my colleague, and the Croatian distribution system operator. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the Croatian distribution system operator, our company, what we are doing, and then in the second part of this presentation, my colleague Tomislav will tell you about this self-healing project that we did in Koprivnica. First, a few things about Croatia. Croatia has around 4.3 million inhabitants. The whole country is divided into 20 counties, plus the city of Zagreb, which is the main city of Croatia. We have almost 87,000 square kilometers of Croatia, and the capital is Zagreb, as I said, with 100,000 inhabitants. Who is HEP ODS or DSO, distribution system operator? We are the only distribution system operator in Croatia. We are for the whole country. I know that is a bit strange because in different countries you have a lot of distribution system operators in the whole country. Here we are the only NV for the whole country. Our company is, we have 21 distribution areas. So exactly one company and 21 distribution areas. Every distribution area has its own grid. It could be said it's a strange, different company, every 21. Our investment in grid are around 120 million euros a year, and our operational costs and the maintenance is around 20 to 30 million euros a year. We have 7,500 employees. By the 2018, that number will be around 6,300. Total consumption in 2017 was 16.7 terawatt hours, and our grid losses are around 8.04%. Distribution network length is around 140,000 kilometers. Most of them, around 65%, is overhead lines, and the rest of our cable networks. We have over 26,000 substations that are high voltage to middle voltage to middle voltage, and middle voltage to low voltage substations. We have 2.4 million measurement points, and today we have over 1,700 renewable energy sources connected to our grid. As I said, HEP Distribution System Operator is the only operator in Croatia, and we are responsible for energy distribution and security of supply for whole 2.4 million our customers, consumers. We divided them into a few categories. We have consumers that are connected to high voltage and middle voltage grid, just over 2,300. Around 200,000 commercial users. Public lighting, 21,500, and 2.2 million residential customers. Total sales of the electricity in 2017 was 15.4 terawatt hours. It was a bit more, but if you count in the grid losses. It's interesting to say that from commercial users 200,000, around 25,000 consumers spend around 43% of energy spent in the distribution network. Just a little about renewables. We have 1,763 renewables connected to our grid. This all happened in the last 10-15 years. In the last 5 years, we have a big boom and a big spike of renewable energy sources. You have a scheme on this side, so you can see in what voltage levels they are connected. And we have a chart here, so you can see by the type of the energy they use, the electricity they use. We have hydro, wind, we have a lot of solars, but if you can see, not a lot of big power, which means that we have a lot of renewable energy sources that are connected to the low voltage networks and some of them to the middle voltage networks. This means that times are changing for distribution system operators, because in the past we had the transmission system operators, the energy went from a transmission system operator to the distribution system operator, and our job was to distribute that energy to our customers. Now with these numbers you can see that we have a lot of renewable energy sources and things are changing, so we have to get our grid smarter. There's also data here, so you can see 4.25% of all consumption in the last year was produced from the renewable energy sources. All of them combined 220 megawatts. If all of them were working together at the same time for the peak load of the whole distribution system in 2017 was around 3,000 megawatts, so roughly about 10% of renewables. A little bit about network control and automation. As I mentioned earlier, we have 21 distribution areas. Every area has their own network control center. We have 10 ABB network manager SCADA systems and 11 Contra Prozanet, which is a Croatian manufacturer. Now we are currently in the process of integration of those network control centers because we realized that if you want to do something smart, you can't have 21 island networks. And if you want to optimize your network and be more efficient, you have to do something bigger. So we are doing 4 control centers, as you can see on this picture down below in the right corner. We're going to have 4 distribution control centers, and they're going to manage the network of the whole Croatia. Also, SCADA Info is an internal application developed by our engineers. It was for mining data from the SCADA systems and for various reports and etc. A few things about our IMR AMI system. As I mentioned, we have 2.4 million consumers. We have 1.64 million mechanical meters, which is a lot. We have a project now which is ongoing for, let's say, a bigger rollout of smart meters, around 500,000, and they're going to be installed in the next year or 2. We also have electronic static meters, around 700,000, smart meters only 80, but it's going to get better as years go. Remotely read meters, we have 150,000, and those 150,000, if you remember from the slide earlier when there were customers by the categories, almost all of the customers, commercial customers, are in this AMI remotely read system. And also, as I said, 23 metering spot, 23,000 metering spots consume almost 43% of energy. This is where you can see we have quite big customers with heavy loads, and you have to take special care of them. That's it for our company. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Tomislav to tell you something about self-healing project in Koprivnica that we did. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tomislav Sinjeri. I came from DSO Electric Koprivnica, and some figures about us is we have a surface of 1,645 kilometers, population above 100,000, customers 53,000, peak power 62 megawatts, consumption. But energy substations, we have 3 substations, 110 to 35, 1335 to 10 or 20, and substations 10 or 20 to 0.4 and 815. Objects in SCADA. All the big substations are in SCADA. We have also one switchyard of 35, 2 switchyards of 10 kilovolts, solar plants also, and that's a schema of communications. We have 16 points with optical cable, WLAN 8 points, GPRS 66 points, digital radio. So we have 77 objects in medium voltage grid. That's about 9.4% of all of the objects in medium voltage that are remotely controlled. So we came to pilot 1. That is 4 reclosers Siemens 3AD with 7 SC80 relays, and they are working individually, with no automation, just selectivity protection settings, and with vertical communication to control system. Communication is RIPEX or digital communication, IEC 104. That's manufactured in Germany, also, and Cubicle. There are 4 of them. That's the schema of communication to that pilot 1. You see there above is control center. That's a distribution substation in the middle, and down it's 4 of the reclosers. They are only communicate with control center vertically. And then we came, thank you. Then we came to pilot 2. It's a decentralized system, so the reclosers communicate with each other horizontally. with their own logic, and also to the control system in the center. That's the pilot 2, 4 of the reclosers with 7 SC80 relays and automation software second phase. They're using goose communication for horizontal communication and ETC 104 for vertical communication. You see here in schema there's 7 SC80 communicates with 2 protocols at the time. The goose and functionality comes that the Flisser that fault location and system restoration is below 300 milliseconds. And also, I didn't write it here, the second phase software has automatic transfer source. So in the first of the section and the last section, the relays, when they lost the power, they automatically switched to another source. That's automatic transfer source functionality of that's automation. Also, the system has new protection functions as jump diff. That's a new protection function, and with that function that came to second phase automation software, and they they can locate and isolate the fault in the system. And also we use adaptive protection settings for the relays. So when the system find the fault and isolate and reconfigure the protection relays has new settings for the new I would say new grid now that's after fault is that's the first project based on the decentralized architecture and on the Wi-Fi communication. So here's the schema on the SCADA system. That's 4 of the reclosers. So we have now outage time that's shorter, and that helps improves our safety and SAIDI indexes. But we have increased cost because of the communication infrastructure. Here's the schema of communication infrastructure, and here in the middle is the hills with forests. So the left one recloser can't see the 3 others. So they, that recloser must communicate with the point upstairs and then down. So that's our challenge, and that's a challenge that we managed to solve. So here is the concept of the decentralized solution. We have here when the fault occurs, isolation is below 200 milliseconds, and reconfiguration is below 300 milliseconds. That's the concept of that, and that's some pictures of vacuum reclosers, testing in Nuremberg and testing in Zagreb. That's some commissioning pictures, assembling on pole, on the concrete pole, on the solid steel pole, and testing and commissioning. And here is the one video short for, we have in all of the sections we made 2 pole short circuits and 1 pole short circuit. And in each section we put power quality devices to measure the time of interruption. So here's the one video of 2 pole short circuit, and you'll see that's showing the transient fault, and outer reclose cycle in first was success. Here you can see. That's the switch with which we do the short circuit, and that's a short circuit here between 2 poles. You'll see the So for that fault, the time for the restoration was 147 milliseconds. So that was fast. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'll invite you to join me or my colleagues in the Siemens stand there. So if you have questions.
Thank you. Goran, I guess you will participate in the debate. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, next presentation will be a business case. Business case on the microgrids and energy communities. We have with us Dirk Van Sintian. Dirk Van Sintian, that is the president of RESCO. So please, the floor is yours.
I need to need a mic. Okay. Good morning. Now for something completely different. I'm not an engineer, so don't expect me to sum up all the appliances we have and all the cables and so on. How does it work? Okay, swipe. Okay. So who do we represent? So the RESCOP is the federation, European Federation of Renewable Energy Cooperatives. In the UK, in Ireland, it's also called Community Power or Community Energy Initiatives. And now in the new directives that are not all finished yet, we are called Renewable Energy Communities or Local Energy Communities, Citizen Energy Communities. For us, these are groups of citizens who cooperate on renewable energy and on energy efficiency. It might be in distribution. Yes, we have members that are DSOs. Some of them are more than a century old and built the lines, like in the Italian Alps. Some of us engage in new things like storage or in services, grouped purchases, for instance. Some of our members engage in electrical car sharing or electrical cargo bike sharing. But most of our members, they engage in production. So they have some solar panels, they have some wind turbines, they might have hydro. And some of our members also are suppliers or are producers and suppliers, like my own cooperative in Belgium. We started very small in an old water mill in 1991. And now we have 55,000 members, and we have enough production for them at home, and we supply 1.5% of the Flemish households with their own green electricity. So regardless of the legal entities these energy communities have, for us it's very important that we follow the International Cooperative Alliance principles. We are local energy communities. We are not the equivalent of microgrids. No, it's a different governance model. Profit is not our aim. Our aim is to serve our members. My own cooperative, we are the cheapest electricity supplier in Flanders for most of the Flemish people. So if you consume too much at night and in the weekend, then you might find a cheaper one. But we are, so that's our aim, supply our members with green electricity from their own country at an affordable price. So what with microgrids now? If we have to do it, I will show you how we will do it. Is this a business case? We are still discovering it, but it seems our members are very interested. Even our DSOs are interested. If we could do it, so they don't have to do it. So some of our members have been doing it since the beginning of the electrification of Europe, like in South Tyrol, the north of Italy. We have about 80 energy cooperatives there. They're united in a Verbund, in a sort of association, which is called ZEF. Some of our newer members, they take over the grid when it's when it comes on the market, when there's an exploitation period that ends. Some of our members, mainly in Germany, citizens want to take over the grid. They want to do it better than the big utility that was doing it. The emblematic example here is Schönau. It's a small town in the south of Germany, where they took over the grid and now also supplier across the whole of Germany. And some of our members, they now experiment with virtual power plants, and we call them community virtual power plants. And this is the example I will show you. This is what's happening in the city of Ghent, one of the major cities in Flanders, Belgium, where the local energy community, Energent, works together with my cooperative, EcoPower, that is present in the whole of Flanders. The project is called Buurzame Stroom, which means community power, something like this. So this is a project in a district of 2 substations are involved, I think, in the city of Ghent. We write it without an H. In English, it's with an H. There are 2 objectives in this project. Make solar PV available for everyone, also for those who don't have a suitable roof, for tenants, landlords, citizens with a low income, non-Dutch speakers. It's a neighborhood with quite a lot of people with another background, Turkey, Roma, and so on. And we do this, the local energy community is doing this through a tailored guidance. They go from door to door, from person to person, from family to family. And in this project, we will also experiment with the grid of the future. That's how we call it. There are a lot of partners. You see their logos here, going from the province, the city, but the DSO, Eandis, and also we are supported by. This project is supported through 2 European projects. One is an Interreg Northwest Europe project. It's called Community Virtual Power Plant. And the other one is the Horizon 2020 project, which is called WiseGrid, and they have a little stand here close by. So the first objective is to provide PV for everyone. So Energent organizes a group purchase to lower the cost of the installation, and they have a special approach for landlords who have tenants. They have a special approach for citizens with a low income, for houses without a suitable roof, for apartment blocks, and so on. So we have a tailored approach. The problem with landlords and tenants, probably you know, the landlord invests, it's his house, but the tenant gets the advantage of the cheaper electricity. So that's a problem. A solution might be that you split it in 2. The landlord invests and receives a monthly amount from the tenant, for instance, €20 per month. But this amount is lower than the savings for the tenant. So there is a win-win. What if the people don't have financial resources? The problem is, even now with the getting lower prices for solar panels, you still need to have some savings to invest. A solution is that the city of Ghent provides energy loans through a relatively simple procedure. We have to help people to go through it. And so these loans are for very poor people at 0%, and for others at 1%. The second solution is that the project itself, Buurzame Stroom, Energent, the local energy community, or another energy cooperative like my own, EcoPower, that we invest in the PV panels and that we rent it to the client. So there's a win-win for both of them. So what we encounter a lot of roofs that are not insulated. So before installing PV panels, it's better to insulate the roof first, but this is often a big hassle. It's a lot of work and it involves different entrepreneurs. So what is the solution? That we integrate it in an offer for installation and PV, and we help them to get subsidies. So it is considered as one project. The second solution is that there is a solidarity fund from people who are better off that cover part of the cost of the installation. There are other target groups I mentioned. There's language barriers, so we need interpreters. So we approach people in Turkish if needed. There is distrust in this neighborhood, so we are looking for, we approach key figures in the neighborhood, for instance in this Turkish community, and so that they go along, or organizations, the existing organizations in the neighborhood. But this is a lot of work. This is something a DSO won't do. This is something a local energy community does. What helps as well in this project, we have now PV panels with an excellent price and excellent quality. We offer a non-binding offer, a non-binding design with the support of the local energy community. The renovation guidance is for free if wanted, if the roof has to be insulated. And there the city of Ghent has a supporting system. So we bring this all from door to the people. We help them to implement it. Without the help, they won't do it. So, and through the project of WiseGrid, we can implement digital meters that are made smart, that are connected to the internet. And there we work together with the DSO, which is now called Fluvius in Belgium. So why is this project interesting? So we're independent as local energy communities. We have technical, two technical opinions. One of the contractor and one of our own, of Buurtzame Stroom. Sometimes there's a small chance that the installation we propose is too good, more expensive than needed. But it responds to the wishes of the client, and it is not, we don't want to maximize the profit. And it's an individual approach. The advice is individual and careful, and it is not optimized. So it's really personal. And there's a small chance of under or over dimensioning, and this is of course important for the payback time. So I won't go over this, but this is what they use as an approach. For the criteria for the PV panels, so we looked at the ecological aspects of it, the quality, and these are the solar panels that were selected. So we think that we made a good selection. This is an initiative of this local energy community cooperative. They are very young; they're only 4 or 5 years old. A few hundred of members, two employees, I think. But they are a member of the Flemish Federation, Rescoop Vlaanderen, and they are supported by the other older, bigger cooperatives. We use local installers who are doing the job themselves, not with Polish employees or Romanian employees that are underpaid. So there is a lot of social dumping in this sector, so we want to avoid it. So we think we have an excellent price quality offer to the people, but of course they judge themselves. So this you have seen maybe already 100 times. So we go from one system, we experiment with the new system. So the WiseGrid project, it's a Horizon 2020 project. In this project, people here in this neighborhood, they get an app, and they are stimulated to vary their consumption when the prices change. So we experiment with this. Also, SMEs of the neighborhood can participate. And in Ghent, there is an innovative cooperative which is offering electrical car sharing. So they have already, I think, more than 30 cars in the city. And they are involved in the project to charge their cars when the price is low. In the Interact project, we go one step further. We add home batteries to the PV installations, smart inverters, smart appliances, and there with Partago, we will, in the near future, when it's possible, we will also experiment with the vehicle-to-grid aspects. So this is I will go over it. So there are side projects, PV panels on apartment blocks, how to finance. So in an apartment block, there's a sort of democracy, and everyone has to agree, or the majority has to agree, or a special majority. I myself will live in a co-housing project. Sometimes we do years, 10 years over of making a decision. So to overcome this, we are looking for other ways of financing and convincing all the owners of the apartments to install finally these solar panels on the roof. PV panels combined with heat pumps. In the future we will we'll have to get rid of natural gas. So we're turning more and more to the use of heat pumps. Perhaps distribution of direct current from solar panels to the houses immediately, because most appliances can run on DC or are running on DC, etc. So these are the contact details of Energent and of our federation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dirk. Well, and last but not least, now we are going to listen a presentation on how to develop solutions for using decentralized resources for the supply of large demand centers. For that purpose, we have also a tandem presentation with two people from Innogy. Sarah Beneman.
Yeah.
Sarah is the head of competence centers, energy grids at Innogy, and then Torsten Knopp, that is the head of European regulatory and projects at Innogy. Thank you. The floor is yours.
So how to start it? Hello, good morning. I'm Sarah Fellerman. My colleague and I will present and introduce you our project DesignNet. So DesignNet, it's one of the showcases in a funding program Syntec in Germany. So as you see in this funding project, the whole country is divided in 5 model areas and 5 showcases running parallelly in the whole country. So the goal of these projects is to develop blueprints for the energy world of the future. So in the last years, we have had lots of projects addressing different challenges, different problems in the energy world. And now we want to integrate these solutions in a systemic approach to make a blueprint. So we know we will have different regions, we will have different challenges and problems, and so we will also have different solutions. We need these solutions, but the question is how to integrate these different solutions in one systemic approach. In the whole funding program, which is funded by the government in Germany, there are included 200 companies and a funding amount of 230 million euros are invested. The projects are running over 4 years in Germany. Now we focus on the region of DesignNet. So there are 3 states in this project. We have North Rhine-Westphalia, we have Rhineland-Palatinate and Saarland in our project. So we have started at the beginning of 27, and so we will run, as I said, for 4 years. We have about 46 or 47 partners in our project, and as you see in the chart, we have or we face different problems. So we have different regions with different amounts of loads and production. So we have load centers with high amount of consumption or low amount of consumption. On the other side, we have lots of power plants, so PV and wind power plants in different regions. And so this mixture gives us these different challenges we need to develop different solutions. You will also see that we do not have to develop the solutions. We do also have to demonstrate that these solutions are also applicable. So you will see that we have 20 demonstrators in our project and also 10 existing low-edge projects. So at least we do have 30 different demonstrators in this project. So you see the heterogeneity of the solutions in this showcase. So let's start a film, and here you will see the goals and the approach in our project.
We all want to leave behind an unspoiled environment for future generations. Yet global warming is advancing further. The goals agreed in Paris in 2015 to lower CO2 emissions could be the last chance to halt this process. Germany has achieved a lot since the start of the transformation of the energy sector. Decarbonization, decentralization, and digitalization of the energy sector is in full swing. With more than 1.6 million solar energy systems and 27,000 wind turbines, the share of renewables in electricity generation has already increased by more than 1/3. That is an important first step. However, the development of the regenerative electricity generation alone will not guarantee the success of the transformation of the energy sector. But why is that? There are three major challenges to overcome. Firstly, it must be possible to accommodate and transport each centrally generated kilowatt from renewables to the distribution systems. However, they are not designed for this. Secondly, the supply of green electricity must be independent of the whims of nature. It must therefore be possible to store excess energy for this purpose or put it to another use. Thirdly, and crucially, a lot more fossil fuel energy from other CO2 generating sectors, such as heating and transport, needs to be replaced by green energy. Only then will it be possible to cover most of the energy demand with renewable energy generation in order to meet the Paris climate goals. Our mission at DesignNets is to develop strategies that overcome precisely these challenges and make the energy system fit for the transformation of the energy sector. The main aim is to consume electricity wherever it is generated as far as possible. So-called integrated energy is another area of focus in which green power is used for heat generation and electric mobility. We are also developing and testing various storage technologies. Projects serve the purpose of creating smart grids that can respond to the decentralized feed-in of renewable energy in a flexible manner. Last but not least, digitalization tools help us in the process. The transformation of the energy sector can only succeed if the available data is interlinked and used effectively. All DesignNets projects have two aspects in common. They increase the flexibility of electricity grids and enable them to accommodate as much excess green energy as possible at any time, without losing sight of the economic side in the process. DesignNets is sponsored by the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy as part of the funding program Smart Energy Showcases Digital Agenda for the Energy Transition, or SYNTEC. More than 30 individual projects will emerge by 2020 along the so-called energy route. Around 50 partners from business and science will jointly develop, test, and combine the building blocks of DesignNets in a complete system. The result will act as a blueprint for the electricity grid of the future, in Germany and beyond. This way, we can provide future generations with a functioning world running on clean and affordable energy.
Okay, and what's special about this project, especially compared to the 4 other Syntec projects? I'd like to take a closer look with you. Special is not only, as you've seen, that you can take a look at all and many different projects through our app, which I think is perfect. After this, download the app. It's a really modern, good combination of virtual reality and gamification, and it's really is one of the best apps I've ever seen. Give it a look. No. How do we advance? Exactly. So what's special? Special is basically 2 different things. This is a decentral project, and this is a heterogeneous project. And I think both characteristics together have a lot of potential. We all know basically what's depicted here, that from a central system we are going towards a decentralized system. And our conviction is not only that this change will happen and that we'll have most of the flexibilities, most of the renewable generation, most of different customer needs, and most of solutions at lower voltage levels in distribution grids, which of course brings a new role, a new identity to the DSO. Our conviction is that one, that also the solutions should be at a decentral level. And that for most things, we'll not manage energy transition by having solutions on a central level only. And that's the approach of design nets, which is basically it's design, and nets in German it's grid, which basically is a project that's of course focused on the needs of market parties, but also focused on what is necessary and which possibilities do distribution system operators have. So we are looking at decentral solutions, which then of course, and these decentral solutions, that's the second component, are also heterogeneous. This is an overview of different demonstrators we have. Green is electricity in, yellow is gas, red is heat, blue are products, orange is hydrogen. You see that the demonstrators have all kinds of different combinations, what's going in there in sector coupling and what's going out there. And I think this is this is a particular strength of the project, that we have a number of different approaches, different problems, different challenges, but also different solutions then according to the conditions that there are, which might help forward concepts how to solve and how to design the energy transition. This is a contrast, and they are not bad at all. I mean, that's their approach to the 4 other Syntec projects. This is a program with a huge overall volume. We are talking about, Sarah said it's 230 million euros in funding only for R&D, the 5 projects, plus the part of the companies involved. So we're talking about roughly €500 million in R&D projects. And the 4 others are all constructing one single solution. They're constructing one set of products, for example, for flexibilities. They are constructing one marketplace, one specific marketplace. They are having one set of processes addressing the problems. And I think our open approach in saying we are not designing something specific, but we are looking at different situations and give indicators under which conditions which solution might be more suitable or less suitable, and under which other conditions there might be another approach, is a universal tool. It's modular. And from this point of view, I think, and that's important, it can be applied to a number of situations, not only in the German context, but even beyond. And I think that's the real strength of design nets, is not only the decentral approach, but also the heterogeneity. And heterogeneity there we have of challenges, and there we have heterogeneity, of course, of different solutions. We have solutions involving mobility concepts, e-mobility. There's customer behavior. Of course, there's the grid in the center of it, and without digitalization, all of these things wouldn't be possible. We involve an approach for decentralized generators on how they can provide flexibility, under which circumstances, and how processes and products should look like. We take a look at market design, and of course also not only at at customer behavior, but also at large customers. We also have industrial customers involved. And I think that's why DesignNets is keeping worth a look at, because it's so wide, so varied, so modular, so applicable to a number of different situations, giving a number of different solutions that you don't necessarily have to follow one by one, but where you get indicators for what is important and in which direction we should proceed.
So, the last 2 slides. So I've changed my mind. I will present first this slide. So the question is now how we will realize our concept. So we have defined different roles for the energy system of future. And so you have heard we have lots of demonstrators. So these are the different contributors at the end of the chain in the system, in the energy system. So we have another very important role, that's the aggregator role. We will have markets, and naturally we will also have system operator. The question is how these different roles will interact in this energy system. You see a traffic light at the left side of the slide. So nowadays we know 2 different phases, green and red. What we were doing is to design the yellow phase, so to define what's it and how the different roles are interacting in this phase. So you see that the demonstrators are interacting with the aggregators. They give their information, their schedule to the aggregators, and the system operator is interacting with the market in this yellow phase. So if we need as system operator flexibilities for our system to solve the congestions, for example, in our system, so we interact with the market. This is also the case situation between the aggregators and the market. And so in this way, the prosumers as well as the aggregators have the freedom to sell their products at the market. So they have, so this freedom to collect their flexibilities, to make some products and sell it at the marketplace. And we also can interact and order the products which we need. So how we do it? So we work with a cascaded aggregation system. So you have seen in our video that we will use or consume the generated electricity locally as soon as it's possible. So, but there will be somehow some interaction between the different aggregation levels, let's just say. So we will have the regional data hubs, and we have the different cascade levels. So we will have also over regional, and a central data hub, and in this way we will make new products at different aggregation levels. The way we do it is that we have made a laboratory. We call this laboratory cockpit, and in this cockpit we will scan our grid. We will see what are the flexibilities which we need in our grid, and we will also make prognosis. For example, with the environmental data which we will receive, the weather data, but also with the demonstration schedules. And then we will make solutions how to solve these congestions, and then we will send these demonstrators our optimized schedules. But the point is that we don't steer these demonstrators centrally. As I said, we give them the freedom to make their products, and at the other side, we will also have the freedom to order the flexibilities which we need. So that's the way we want to design the market, the energy market of the future, and also the interaction with this market. So my colleague will be also here at the podium discussion. So if you have questions, we will be happy to answer this question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank all the speakers for keeping so strictly the timing. So thank you very much. So now it's time for the debate. So please, Marco, Francois, Goran, Dirk, and use this.
Okay, I also would like to thank all the speakers. I think we heard quite diverse set of approaches and views from across the industry. I thought I would ask a few questions to the presenters, and then I will open the floor for any questions from the audience. Luca, it's been the most time since you presented, so I'll start with you if you don't mind. One of the issues when people talk about, for instance, distributed generation, PV storage, and the increased level of self-consumption is if your distribution network and transmission network charges are based on your net consumption, that would of course undermine the revenues that DSOs and TSOs earn. So how do you see that would affect the business case, the business propositions for DSOs, TSOs, and what do you think should change to accommodate both self-consumption as well as enable a viable business for the network operators?
What we need is that the regulated tariff, because this is a regulated tariff, this is not a market, the result of a market. So in some way it must be defined by someone, and it's not market-driven, directly market-driven. This regulated tariff must be as near as possible, as respondent as possible to the actual cost structure, in order to give the right price signals. As we said, the future is power and not is more power-driven than energy-driven. So conceptually speaking, this tariff structure must be more and more connected to power availability, to the megawatt, and less to the megawatt hour, as it is today in many cases. It can also distort wrong signals if it's strongly related to the energy. It must be related to the power, to the availability of the power in time and place, ideally speaking, differentiated geographically and in time.
Okay. Thanks so much, Luca. Does anyone else want to follow up on that? Or?
As a DSO, I think, of course, we are thinking a lot about designing grid tariff systems for the future, mostly, of course, distribution tariff systems. I think there are two aspects. They should be cost reflective, and you've exactly noted what it should be. And most of the costs are caused by power. However, in many member states of the EU, the energy part is pricing the power, where it's basically the energy part is giving the probability that a certain use of maximum power is relevant for grid construction or for grid extension. So we should not necessarily link a price for kilowatt hours to pricing energy. Mostly it's pricing power. And the second part, of course, is giving incentives to flexibility use. We always differentiate flexibility use between two things. One is implicit and the other is explicit flexibility. Implicit flexibility is what you stimulate through different pricing, for example, in retail, or through different grid tariffs for grids. And explicit flexibilities is buying particular products that were designed for, that give you the right to exercise flexibility. And I think it should always be both. It should always be implicit flexibility and explicit flexibility. And that, of course, is the main other requirement that we have for grid tariff systems, that it should provide signals, and there you are completely correct, for implicit flexibility.
Thank you. Thanks very much for your answers. The next question would be for you, Francois, if you don't mind. So, from your, let's say, industrial perspective, and it's a very technical question, do you see the communication standards, or standards in general, as any sort of obstacle towards the uptake of demand-side response across Europe? Or do you think that's something that can be fairly easily solved?
Thank you. Fairly simply solved, I don't think it will be the case. What we intend to do, of course, is to simplify the communication mean between the different actors. And for that, it's really a request to have standards, communication standards, if we want the markets to take off. So for that, we need to have at least a European one, and maybe a pure international communication means between the demand side and the supply side. And this is really an important request. Today there is no obvious standards, and so we need to identify it or to set it up rapidly to help the market take off.
Thanks so much. Okay, the next question would be for you, for Goran. So, nice to meet a Croatian colleague.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
Nice for the second DSO of the podium.
yes, yeah, exactly. So, one question would be: so DSOs have traditionally been an industry which is quite conservative. So it's been slow in adopting new technologies, new approaches, especially something that's seen as radical or risky. So how do you see this kind of aversion to new technology maybe affecting the speed at which we would like to see this flexibility coming onto our grids? Is it the case that the DSOs should become a bit more risk prone, or is it the case that the customers also need to adapt to this and maybe perhaps accept a slightly higher level of risk in terms of security of supply?
Well, I think the truth is somewhere in between, because DSOs traditionally, as I said in the presentation, were in essence you could see them as a passive network, because you had energy coming from the transmission system to the distribution system and then to the customer. Then today times have changed, because we have a lot of renewable energy sources, and this changes let's say the game from the ground up. These renewable energy sources in Croatia, I can say, from our distribution system network, in some substations, we have energy going from the distribution network to the transmission network. So the power flows are different and voltages are different, and we have to acknowledge that and acknowledge new technologies. As a new technology that we did this project, the self-healing network, yes, the consumers should be more prone to with more outages. Why? Because when we did this project, on these two lines that this project is affecting, outages, we had more outages when this project was implemented. But in essence, if you look in long term, this project achieved that you could annulate the outages altogether. So if you're looking today, tomorrow, yeah, some customers had outages more than before, but with applying new technologies, we can resolve that. Of course, it has to be seen where you can install such solution and everything, but the solutions are here. Also, the operators, yeah, they didn't have or the opportunity, or I would say need for the new technologies or adapting new technologies quickly. Because network was, let's say, passive. Today we don't have that, and we have to be fast and accommodate and accept new technologies to get our work easier, to help ourselves, in essence.
Great, thanks so much for the answer. I don't know if any other DSOs, basically you, Torsten, would you like to comment on?
I think we will be hard pressed to get something through with a different standard on security of supply. And I think of course there are different member states, there are different standards, there are different approaches. But I think that we should do the utmost to say yes, we guarantee what we have as security of supply as a whole system, TSOs and DSOs together in a one system approach. And I think we would be hard pressed to have a lower, in the same way that you'll be hard pressed to sell somebody flexibility and saying you have less comfort. There should always be sell them something additional. Say you have the same comfort, the same security of supply, the same benefits as you have today, but then we have products that have something additional on it. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, thanks to both for your very informative answers. And a question for you, Dirk. So obviously you've done a lot of work on developing these local community energy systems. A lot of people talk about barriers to higher uptake of these decentralized solutions and so on. But from the level, from the scale of the work you've done, it seems you've either found a way to overcome those barriers, or maybe that there aren't so many barriers. What's your take on that?
Well, I can give my own experience. So we bought a derelict water mill in 1985, and it used to produce electricity from 1907 to 1967 and provide the village with the electricity. And it was a national monument, and we restored it, and they wanted us to produce electricity again. That's how we got into the business. And then we went to the DSO, which was controlled completely by Electrabel, a monopolist in Belgium at that time. And we said, well, we will have excess electricity. We will have 450,000 kilowatt hours a year, excess electricity. What do you pay for it? And they said, you will have to pay for us to accept it. So this was an obstacle until 1999 in Belgium. So to overcome obstacles, we created the lobby organization, the Federation for Renewable Energy, with professors, universities. And so we have to do this. We had to do this in every country, and now there is a real sector. In the beginning, there was, when we had a meeting, it was all people like me with a bunch of hippies, so strange people, few professors. But now it's big business, wind turbines and so on. So, but for us citizens, we always have we're very inventive in overcoming obstacles. So you have to lobby. That's what we've been doing now with the new European directives. Before, there was no place for a self-consumer. So there's now a definition in the new directives. There's a definition for renewable energy communities. There will be a definition for local energy communities. We are now pressing very hard in the last months to come in the trialogues to change the word local into citizen, because we've seen that in many countries, businesses, big businesses, they are trying to get rid of the grid costs. So they, in an industrial park, they say we're a local energy community. No, that was not the intention of the Commission. It's about citizens and what citizens do together. So it's not, we won't try to avoid network costs, to distribution costs. My own cooperative, we've been a supplier since the liberalization, 2003. We always paid for distribution costs and transmission costs. We paid for balancing. So we are a market player like everyone else. So in some countries, the barriers are lower than in others. But I can assure you, in a country like Greece, even now they have a law on local energy communities. There are people in power that put if you have a good project, but they put red lights on, and to overcome these red lights, you need a lot of political backing.
Thanks, Torsten. We'll also like to follow up on that.
I think also from a DSO perspective, of course, first of all, you would say you have to balance people getting out of the solidarity of the grid, leaving that, and then enabling local communities. However, what I liked with both your presentations was that you gave benefits of energy communities, be them local or whatever, that were genuine, that were sustainable. You said there is additional security of supply. There is more integration of renewables. There is a benefit for people to organize them locally, which they really sense as a benefit and to make decisions on a local level. And I think, if we want to balance the interest of everybody connected to a DSO grid, to a TSO, and what DSO and those in communities, we have to look at sustainable benefits and not only at saving taxes, levies, grid fees. That's not sustainable. That's just expanding communities and getting benefits at the expense of somebody else. And I think there are enough benefits in these small organizations so that they can really have a genuine business model, and we should go for that.
What we always tell to municipalities and mayors, the real benefit, there's a real benefit. Think of all the money flowing out of Europe for oil, for gas, for coal, for uranium. If we return to renewables and we invest in renewables, this drain of all this money, for each Belgian family, it's 2,000 euros a year that flows out of Europe. And there are 15 million, I don't know how many households, there are 1.5, I don't know how many households, but it's billions. I think it's 20 billion euros that flows out of Belgium every year for fossil and nuclear fuels. So if you turn to renewables and more efficiency, there's a large amount of money that will accumulate instead of draining out of our economy. And that's what mayors in the smallest village understand, if you explain it correctly.
Thanks very much. I would now like to invite any questions from the audience. How do we do with the microphones? Shall we? Would anyone like to ask a question to any of the panelists, or more than one of the panelists? That's how it works. Wow, this is innovative.
Yeah, hello. My question is to our colleague from Croatia. In EU, there is a goal till 2020 to have 20% energy from renewables and to decrease the CO2 to emissions.
Emissions from
How Croatia is going to meet this goal, first of all, and I just have to read. And what Croatia plan to increase further the renewable percentage into the energy mix?
Okay. Thank you for the question. I was talking about the distribution system network. I said that we have 1,700 renewables on distribution network. We also have a transmission network, which has a large power plants, wind turbines. And if we are looking for those 2020 goals for the 2020, we are really near that. I think we are just a bit over it because we have a few big hydropower plants. There's a debate if they should count as a renewable or not, but if you take them into account, we are over those 20% of renewable energy sources. And further down, there is plans for a lot of bigger solar power plants. There will be a few of them on the islands with power of a few megawatts. And that is the plan that we are going in. But if you invest a lot of money into renewable energy sources, you also have to invest in the distribution network because of the flexibility and everything because we as a distribution company, we have to consider the security of supply for all the customers.
Just a small comment. RESCOPE is part of the EU Island Secretariat. It's an initiative of the Commission and the Parliament. which is helping EU islands to make the transition to renewables. And one of the pilots is the island of Kres. I don't know if I explained it. Kres, and it will be sort of pilot for the other Croatian islands, but also for other islands across Europe.
The aim with that project is to have a sustainable island on its own. The plan is to have a big solar power plant, storages for the night, and to be sustainable all together as an island, from the grid and physically.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, the gentleman over there.
Thank you.
You have to be good at catching
Sorry.
to ask a question.
Just anybody. What is the new role of the TSO and the large-scale generating generating companies in a more decentralized future? Because how can they create new value if we do proceed with decentralized systems? That's all.
Yeah, thanks very much for the question. Does anyone want to take this?
TSO.
Yes, yeah, TSO. Of course, anyone else is free to comment.
Well, it's a question which is frequently asked. The answer is in the figures that I showed in my presentation, where you can see that for each additional dollar invested in renewables, you need to invest at least $1 in grids, where these grids are high voltage, medium and low voltage grids. I take here the example of the Chinese, who have built a huge organization to foster their idea to build an infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, HVDC, high voltage continuous current, with incredible powers, running through the equator and from North Pole to South Pole, so that you can collect the sun energy from the half side of the Earth, which is exposed to the sun, and the wind from the poles, and move this energy to the whole world. So this is their idea, and if you think of it, it's an extreme, but it's an extreme application of the variability of renewables. In the poles, you have a lot of wind, which is very constant, and in the equator, you have the maximum heating radiation. So this is to answer to the role of the transmission and the TSO. The role of the bulk generation is to be there and not to be switched on. To be ready to be switched on, but not to be switched on, or as less as possible, but stay there ready and be paid not to do anything. So we must be happy to give them money not to do anything, to be ready to switch on when needed.
Thank you. Would you like to comment as well, Dirk?
Yes, we've had some studies made for us by CE Delft, which is a research institute in the Netherlands. And according to their prognosis, 50% of the electricity we need in 2050, it will be renewable, will be made by citizens at home, on their roofs, or in their neighborhood. Of course, we need another 50%. And in Belgium, for instance, we have fairly large, we have only a coastline of 45 kilometers, I think, but we have fairly large offshore wind infrastructure, and of course they are connected to the high tension grid, and we already had to enforce the high tension lines to bring all this electricity to the industry mainly. So I think in 2050 citizens households will mainly provide themselves, and the bigger projects will be needed by industry. That's what we think that will happen. If we have a glass wishing ball, I don't know the English word, to prevent the future.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, gentleman over there.
Thank you. Question for Dirk again. We all see the upcoming from the energy communities. In our region, what we see is that for new city developments, project developers are looking at it as a way to create more value for themselves if they can access some kind of microgrid or an island. What we see is that not not the RESCOPs are there in between. It's the project developers. And what is a danger is that for DSOs who are willing to serve them and think together on how we can do that you're some kind of an island, microgrid, or a local energy community, that project developers are gone when citizens move in their houses. Are the RESCOPs really looking at that market and coming in between? For new city developments, are there RESCOPs who take the role as a local energy community? Or is it just marginal? Or is it that maybe the project developers don't want RESCOPs to be a partner? I know there are projects that do, but at some kind, and you also give the example that citizens, the word citizens has to become in the European law, because indeed mostly are the businesses, the organizations. We see some money on becoming an energy community. So I'm asking myself, where are the RESCOPs from time to time? Why they don't always be there?
Well, of course, we are a bottom-up. We consist of bottom-up initiatives, and it's up to citizens to take action. Of course, we as a European Federation, as a Belgian Federation, Flemish Federation in Belgium, for instance, we support them. But of course, the work to be done is enormous, and that's why we team up with cities and municipalities, with social housing cooperatives, for instance, as well. To do this. But I agree with you that a lot of the old utilities, to give you an example, in Belgium, Engie, Electrabel, they created an energy cooperative of citizens, they call it like this, to participate in their wind projects. It's only a very small participation, but that's how they counter the real citizens' initiatives. Also, EDF has created a cooperative in Belgium. All the big players created cooperatives. In Germany, what we have seen with moving from feed-in tariffs to tenders is that there was a special part of the tender for community projects. All developers disguised themselves in community energy projects. And so now the German government took away the exceptions for community energy. So that's why at the European level we really work very hard, so as hard as we can, to have a very good definition. What is an energy community? And it should be something not of businesses, it should be something of citizens. They can include a local shop, they can include a carpenter and so on, but it's not about big companies. It's about micro and small companies, maybe SMEs, but it's bottom-up initiatives, and it's not about profit, it's about serving the members. So that's why we need in Europe a good definition, and then in every member state we have to implement this, and and especially in Eastern Europe. In Croatia it's a bit easier, we have a member there, ZES, probably you know them. But in all the other countries, they never heard about citizens that take initiative on energy. No, it's something the state is doing for you. So there's a lot of work to be done, and please join.
Now it finally gets a bit controversial. That's nice. I mean, honestly, there are real citizens communities and there are not real citizens communities, and everything that's run by a business is not a real citizen community. I mean, businesses provide products that answer to the needs of people. And if a business provides a product that answers to the need of people to organize themselves on a local level, then what's wrong with that? Sorry, and I refuse to succumb to a definition that says there are real communities, and whoever defines what real communities is and false communities. And I think from the DSO role, especially from discussions on a European level, I think many DSOs are coming around and said, all these people having communities taking parts out of my grid, that's all bad stuff, because they take parts of my grid away, it all gets more complex in the processes. That was the original thought. And I think many DSOs are coming around and saying, no, we answer to the needs of citizens. And as we answer to the needs of citizens, we provide products for them. We provide not only services for them to set up their micro-utilities, we also enable them to do so if they want to, if there's a genuine local need to do that. And as I said, a sustainable and genuine benefit, not just saving grid tariffs or taxes or levies. We help them, we have products, we assist them, we maybe manage the grid for them. What's wrong with a business answering to the needs of citizens? And I don't think that somebody from us can define what a real citizen community is and what not.
Yeah, but Dirk, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah. So you think there is not a difference between a cooperative made by ENGIE that let people participate for 1% in their projects and a citizen energy initiative that let them participate for 100%? 100% of the profits in Belgium are 90% of the cost of the energy transition is through the DSOs goes to the households. So we pay as citizens 90% of the cost of the energy transition. And we only own 4% of the production facilities. And you could say, but you can never, as citizens, you can never pay all these wind turbines. 1,000 wind turbines we need more in Belgium. That cost 3 billion euros. The citizens in Belgium have 270 billion euros of savings that give nothing. So it's we as citizens cooperatives, we must see that the energy transition, that we own the production facilities of the future because we guarantee the rentability, the return on investment. So we should see to it that the wind, which is a common good, the sun that shines for everyone, is not stolen again by the big utilities. It's an enormous chance, this energy transition, for the local economy. Yeah, of course, I'm a radical. Probably you're laughing, but we must see that in the future, people are not fooled again. The production facilities come very close to us on our own roof in our neighborhood, and we must reap the profits ourselves and not leave it over to ENGIE, to EDF, and all these others. It's an enormous chance for the local economy.
Yeah, if you want to ask just a quick response.
Enable people to choose what they want. And if they want your model, then they choose your model. If they want the services of a company, let them choose the services of the company. But make it a level playing field.
Great. Thank you very much for the very interesting debate. But let's just take a few more questions from the audience.
Thank you. I have a question for Francois. Is there any data or projection of levelized energy costs in a situation like the mini-grid standalone shown in your presentation in the island of Singapore?
Yes, that's a good question. Today the project is not finalized, so it's not in operating. So it will be really operated in beginning of 2019. And we will have more precise figures. I didn't want to provide figures which were not accurate enough for the operating time we have identified today. So I expect to have this to answer to your questions in the 3 to 4 months from now. Sorry for not being accurate today.
Thank you, Francois. We had a question over from this side.
Thank you. A short reflection on the discussion we experienced a couple of minutes ago. What I think is, if we stay on that level of discussion, what is a real community, what not, who should be included, being eligible to work in this community or not, I think we won't be able to sell the product of a local energy community to the demand owner, to the people out there. Because if we ourselves, as being a stakeholder or key people in this business, if we are not able to get a common view of what we are going to provide to the end consumer for the being participants in a community, so how would we then be able to establish a business model if even that's not settled? So, on one hand side, I'm really happy that there's the European Commission already establishing a framework, a legal framework in the upcoming days and weeks. Being it a local or a renewable energy community or whatsoever, but at least we've got something. But on the other hand side, if we ourselves are, and including you on the panel, are not having a clear vision what's in there for the end customer, how shall I, as being a startup named Regional Energy, being able to establish a business model?
Well, I think both of us have quite. Sorry, I think both of us more or less have quite clear ideas what could be in there. And of course, we don't have finished. Maybe you have, but we don't have finished products as a DSO. But we have certain ideas on how we can respond to, you would say, citizens' needs. I'd say customer needs. And of course, that is a voyage. You see what they can, what they like, what they don't like, and so on. But I think we all take these needs to organize themselves locally, to have a say in what's going on, to have local products as genuine needs that you should reply to.
Yeah, I've had this discussion already for since the winter package came out. So in the beginning they thought we were pirates and we wanted to cut off rich neighborhoods from the grid and have cheaper electricity for rich people. But I showed you in the example that instead we just work in the poorer regions. We need the profits of the renewables to help people that endure energy poverty. It shouldn't. The profit shouldn't go from citizens to the big utilities again. No, they should stay as local as possible with the citizens, and that's our model. We are not about 24 rich German farmers who install 24 2.4 megawatt wind turbines. That's not an energy community. That's an investment club, and a very profitable one, and guaranteed by the German citizens. No, that's not what we are about. We are about something else.
Yeah. I think that both models must live together, both today and in the future. We need all that is available. Each roof on each of each existing building must be used, and on top of that, we need offshore and we need whatever, because the challenge is enormous, and we need to be able to use whatever is available. First thing. Second thing, the basic evolution that we are living is that we are moving from OPEX to CAPEX, which means we are moving from variable costs to investments, CAPEX. So local communities, fantastic, but you need to put 30,000 euros on that, or 20,000 euros, and you need to be willing to put 20,000 euros on this investment. In Italy, mainly in the southern part of Italy, this is not frequently happening. So we need to also to revolutionize the ways how we finance these things, how we manage the relationship between the tenant and the landlord. There are many new challenges. No one is willing to pay an electric vehicle twice as much as the typical fuel-driven car, even if you calculate the total cost of ownership. Already today, an electric vehicle is convenient, but we are not used to think this way. Third thing, electrons today and tomorrow still will follow the rules of electrotechnics. If the voltage goes down, the electron goes there. So let's keep this in mind in any case.
Yeah, if I still can say
it's a quick
so
one, please.
I hear sums about 30,000 euros. To give you the example of my cooperative, we produce more electricity than our members consume. On average, these 55,000 members, on average, they invested €1,000. So €1,000 per household suffice to produce renewable energy in Belgium. So it's cheaper than putting solar panels on your roof, even now when the prices have gone down. So an energy community gives opportunities to people with lower incomes because there's solidarity among us.
Thanks, mate. Yep. Great. We had another question from the gentleman over here. Sorry, could you just introduce it? I forgot to ask the previous discussants. But if you could just please quickly introduce yourself, just to give us a bit of background, where you come from.
Certainly, Simon Anderson from Zigzag Strategy and Research. I wanted to talk about demand and the increase in demand in electricity. So I think most people accept that electrification of transport and heating is probably going to double, if not even treble, the amount of electricity we need to produce. Does this mean that community and local energy is going to produce the background load, and that the grid and the TSOs will be producing the peak load that's needed to support this?
Thank you. I think it links well to the questions on the charging structures, whether it's per power or per energy. So would anyone like to comment on the question?
Yes, we always say that's the challenge of the day after tomorrow. Today we are challenged as DSOs by integrating renewables. That's mostly decentral. That's mostly in rural areas, and that's what everybody sees and what's going on currently. But if you have to take the energy transition seriously, we have a second challenge, which is tomorrow, which is a higher simultaneity of loads, things occurring at the same time, loads being shifted. So the challenge is not on the generation side, but integrating the load side as a grid. And the third one is on the load side as well, and that's part of the energy transition story as well, because we have to do something with these enormous amounts of energy that we produce one day. We have indeed to go into mobility, into heating, into cooling, and so on. So we have additional loads in the future, but that will be even later. And the second and the third effect are combined. For example, in electric mobility, it's not just additional loads, they are also, most probably, if you don't do something, all come at the same time. And we should not only be focused on the generation side, the real challenges that are just around the corner are coming up on the consumption side.
Anyone else want to comment on that? Or?
I think we have to look for solutions on the local level. So if we can solve unbalances on the local level, we should do it. Not let them come together on a higher level, because then it will be more expensive, I think. So it's also about responsibility. Now, citizens who put the solar panel on its roof, he should take responsibility, because it causes a problem for the DSO. So that's what we also tell our members. If tomorrow everyone starts buying electrical cars, we must also take responsibility of solving the problem it causes. So it's not only about taking chances, but also if you organize in an energy community, you should also take responsibilities that come to it.
Okay, thanks very much for the answers. Any last questions from the audience? Yeah, gentleman in the back.
Okay. Hi, I am a student from Austria, and I'm actually from the building sector, and I'm writing my master thesis now about energy flexibility, but my question is more general. We now have more new renewable energy, we have more flexibility, and we have more efficiency. But how much consideration is taken into saving energy? Because I think that will be a part in the future too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. If we want to leverage flexibility, for example, at the building level, we firstly have to have efficient buildings. So there is a first step of optimizing the buildings. Of course, not 100%, because if you don't consume any more electricity, it's difficult to support the grid because you consume zero. But if you have an efficient building, then you can leverage the flexibility, of course, with the application, with the electrical vehicle, with the HVAC, and with the process. Of course, you can leverage more flexibility by adding batteries. But I agree with you, the first step is to have an efficient building before supporting the grid.
Energy efficiency is one of the fundamental drivers of the challenge for the 2030 targets from the European Commission. But don't forget the brutal facts. the brutal facts is that energy efficiency from Europe and the US will be totally irrelevant if compared with the tenfold increase in consumption from the developing countries, Africa and China and Asia in general terms. So even if we put in place enormous results in terms of energy efficiency, there will still be a huge growth in general terms of energy consumption of our planet. And the CO2 is a global issue, obviously, so the only solution is putting down renewables at a huge scale everywhere in the world.
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
I can tell you what we do as an energy cooperative, my own energy cooperative. We have a personal service for our members in helping them renovate their homes, especially in helping them making choices between techniques, between which solar panels, which solar boiler, which insulation material, and this helps. And we see also that once they enter in the energy community, their consumption of electricity goes down year after year. So 10 years ago, the average was the same as the average in France, 3,400 kilowatt hours. Now, the people with solar panels, it's 1,800 kilowatt hours. The people without solar panels, it's 2,300 kilowatt hours. And we see this across Europe. All the energy cooperatives that are a producer and supplier, they see the same evolution. Once you enter an energy community, you're more conscious about what is going on. We educate the people to take measures. We help them to take measures and so to become more efficient.
Thank you very much. I think we'll have to close the session now. So I'd like to thank everyone from the audience for your questions, all the panelists, presenters, and of course to Guillermo for chairing the session. So yeah, I hope to see everyone around, and hope you have a nice rest of the day. Thank you very much.